Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. I thought we would have a look at the new aardvarks, the F-111s. There's two of them that are coming to the game. You have the F-111F, which is coming in for America. It's going to be after the other F-111, which really shouldn't be too much of a surprise. And then also there's another one coming in for Britain with the F-111C, which is actually the Australian version of this. The Americans exported the F-111C specifically for Australia, which is really cool. And the difference between them is not huge, but there is slight differences in terms of armament. You can see here, this is the F-111C. It's between the S2B and the Tornado. So if you want to get the Tornado GR1, it might be worth setting it up right now. So, what is the differences, first of all, between the two vehicles? Well, it's all basically armament. Even though the engines themselves right now, the Pratt & Whitney TF30 P100s are on the F, and then if you have a look at the C, they have the P103s. At the moment, they don't really make too much of a difference, so you are basically getting the same performance. It's kind of weird that the stat cards are the same because of the fact that the American one has so much more afterburner thrust on the engines. So technically, the F should be a lot quicker than the C, but as I said, right now, at least on the stat card, it's either lying or just not kind of telling the truth. They both have the ANAPQ-159, which is a very basic search radar. It doesn't really do too much for the vehicle, won't really give access to a bunch of options. It's probably better just to kind of turn it off. And then also they have the same amount of kind of hard points on the vehicles, but one thing they don't have the same amount of is countermeasures. The F-111C has 240 of them, whereas the American one only right now has 52. Understand though, I feel like these vehicles are going to change quite a lot, so that is something that's obviously subject to change. So the F gets way more ordnance options than the C. That's also a massive difference between them. You get the AGM-65D, the G, a bunch of dumb bombs, and also guided munitions too on the F, whereas for the C, you get some guided munitions, the AIM-9L, the pave tac, which is on both of them, and of course some dumb bombs too. So the major things that you lose out of is the Mavericks, and then also access to more guided munitions. What is interesting about the F and also the C is they don't get a more system, even though the A has a more system, and I'm pretty sure the F-111C is built off of the A, so kind of weird to see that, but it could get added later on. It would be very surprising if it didn't. So looking at the F-111F, which is the American one, you can see that it has access to a bunch of AIM-9L sidewinders. What you can actually do is set up a loadout, which will have access to all the sidewinders. The gun you can also take, so you can go full gunfighter mode if you really want to in this thing. The gun is still in the same position as the previous F-111, so it's centrally mounted kind of underneath the vehicle. You can see the little bulge here where it's set up. So that means that if you want to go fighter mode, you can. 6 AIM-9Ls at the BR that this thing's at, which is at 11.7 in air realistic. It actually keeps the same BR in ground realistic, surprisingly. Would work pretty good. You know, obviously there are a lot better options, but it's at least a consideration. I think mostly, though, people are going to use this thing for its paveway loadout. It has a bunch of different laser-guided munitions, and then also the pave tac targeting pod, which is a thermal pod that you can see here. So this is it without it, and then you can see it right here. You can see how huge this pod is and how much it's going to be kind of useful going forward. It's going to be really cool to see, actually, how effective this is, since this vehicle is incredibly fast. It can get to altitude really quickly with its two huge engines, and then people can donk others from space. There is actually a achievement in War Thunder where I think you have to destroy somebody from like 20 kilometers with a guided bomb. This might be the vehicle to do it with, which would be pretty cool. It does also get the AGM-65Gs. These are the IR guided Gs, the SAP-HE warheads, so not as much penetration as the Ds, and you only get 2 of them instead of the 6. which I'm pretty sure that's what people are going to go for. You also have all the dumb bombs that you would want from this type of vehicle. And the interesting thing about this one is, even though you have all of these different weapon systems, one of the things you might have noticed is they are different from the F-111A. So the A in the game, if you have a look at it, secondary loadouts, it's a lot more wider, right? So it has these 2 extra hard points on the side where you can bring more ordnance. You can't do this on the F, and you can't do this on the C either. And there's a pretty simple reason for this. When you actually put stuff on those external hardpoints on the A, you cannot variably sweep the wings. So the wings are just stuck out wide like this, meaning that you lose a lot of performance, and generally it's something that you shouldn't do. But with the F-111F, even if you do one of the heavier bomb loads, which would be this one, you can still close your wings. So no matter what you do, you are going to be fast to the target, and you won't lose any ability. You can see here with the wing sweeps, even with, you know, the heaviest bomb load, you can still sweep them fully. So that's why they've removed the other hard points on the vehicle. So you can always do that no matter what. It's not even a consideration that you have to think about. So that's kind of cool. It's a nice little addition to it. And it does mean you get less of a bomb load. But as I said, to be honest, if you're using these things, you really shouldn't be doing that anyway, because you want to keep the speed. Since this is such a big target, it gets absolutely hammered by everything that's around. So the RWR on this is the ANALR 2002. It has pretty good bands in the E and J, and it does say it has a more system, so my guess is they just don't have a modification for it yet, so it will still have that there. And for the F-111C, you can say it's the same thing as well, with the same set of a more, so no difference in that setup. And of course, it has all the CCIPs, the CCRPs you would ever want from a vehicle like this. So it's just going to be a more advanced bomb truck, but also with guided munitions for the American one. For the Australian one, you get less AIM-9Ls, so you don't have the 6 of them. You only have access to the 4 plus the gun, which is still fine. You do have all of the dumb bombs in the form of the 500-pounders, but you don't get the 750s, so not as powerful once again. And then you do get some of the guided munitions, which is nice, but you don't get the Mavericks, and you also don't get some of the other options, like you have no rockets with this loadout at all. So the F-111C is a lot more limited in terms of armaments compared to the F, even though they're the same BR. So that is something to take into account when you are going to fly these things. It will still be very useful and still be very good, just not as good as it could be compared to this vehicle here. So for me, when I look at a vehicle like the F-111F, what I see is something which is going to have a decent setup in terms of what it's able to do, meaning that if you do get a clear run at a base, or if you do get a clear run at annihilating something, you're going to be able to do it pretty effectively. It has increased armament, which will keep it alive, but it's a huge radar target, which is one of the biggest issues for it. And also, even though it looks beautiful, it is one of those vehicles that's going to get hunted pretty aggressively. You're going to have to use your speed pretty much all the time in order to be able to get away from enemies, but even then, with full afterburner on, you are a huge heat source for IR guided missiles, and once again, you're at a BR where IR guided missiles get better and better and better compared to the previous ones. So it's going to take you time to get up to speed. You will be able to pretty effectively though, but the general feeling, at least that I have of this machine, is it's going to be much harder to play compared to the other one, just because of this is the era where semi-active radar homing missiles become more potent, and also at the same time it's going to be harder for you to dodge a lot of the other missiles that are around. The British one, or the Australian one, will have a lot better time, just because of the fact that it has more countermeasures, so it'll be able to survive longer, but it has a lot less ordnance options in order to do it too. I want to see how this thing does in ground though, with those guided munitions and with the pod, which is going to be in the center. That will really determine how useful this thing is in terms of how it will be set up. One of the things to also note about this vehicle is it doesn't have its full performance yet. You can kind of tell that it's really not being able to push through the air very well. I don't think the engines are right yet, so that is something to also kind of mention. But at the same time, you still have a ton of rounds on your Vulcan. You still have a bunch of AIM-9Ls you can bring with this thing. There are many options to kind of fight enemies with this, and I'm sure people will use it pretty effectively. I'm looking forward to see how people use this thing. I honestly think I would struggle with it, but others always find a way with these vehicles with so many different armaments to be pretty good. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem, Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.